Welcome to Three, a part of the Tennis Channel podcast network. I'm Gill with Joel Drucker and Amy Lundy. This is our Roland-Garros preview. We have Nadal and Djokovic both in the draw in interesting situations. Many have said that it is the most open, unpredictable men's Roland-Garros in quite some time. And we're going to talk more about that at the end of the show. I think everybody would almost agree with that statement. At the same time, when you have Nadal having won it 14 times and Djokovic and Federer having been really good players on clay in their own right, it's not a very high bar to clear. Most open in the last 20 years. It's like, yeah, well, it hasn't been very open. Let's start with Rafa, though. He draws Alexander Zverev first round. Amy, what was your reaction when you saw that?
That the conspiracy theorists who think that the draws are rigged are going to be silenced for a bit. They'll never shut up. What are the chances? I mean, bad luck for both guys, really. And such a shame that one of the two of them will not be in the tournament going forward, because Nadal is Rafa. He's iconic. Everybody wants to see him. I think Joel mentioned on the last show that he has friends that are showing up hoping to see Nadal. And then in Zverev, certainly not necessarily a fan favorite, and he's got some baggage, but he's a quality player. And among the Grand Slams, this is statistically actually his best slam. So pretty unlucky and kind of a shocking twist.
It is interesting, and I think Rafa would almost have rather played Novak. I think if he's going to draw a top 4 seed, I think Zverev is the toughest matchup from a tennis standpoint, because he's playing well. He's experienced. Remember, they had that great semi that Zverev got injured at in 2022. That was a great match. 3 hours for not even 2 sets. It was unbelievable. So he's quite familiar with Rafa. So yeah, that's going to be quite an emotional moment.
Yeah, I'm in two schools of thought, and I understand why some people are pretty disappointed to see this, in the sense that there are some tennis fans who don't like to watch Alexander Zverev, having been accused by 2 separate women of assault and having the domestic violence trial ongoing in Germany. Well, actually, it's not ongoing yet, but it's this week. And, that makes him, for some population, somebody who they'd rather not watch play tennis. But of course, this occasion with Rafa being sent off is must watch in its own right. So I understand that kind of uncomfortable position for some fans to be in. Now, I also think, on the other hand, I don't think it's a terrible thing that Nadal is playing a title contender in the first round. Like, if you're just looking at the idea that, okay, he's playing a great player right away, there is a positive spin on that. Yes, he's more likely to lose in the first round, but with the questions about best of 5 and the physicality, I mean, that's the great unknown with Nadal. Can he play 4 best of 5 matches right now? Is that going to be all right on his body? We at least know that in this high-profile match against Zverev, win or lose, he's probably physically going to be in really good shape and kind of come out with a lot of energy, and I think it's going to be a really good tennis match. So I'm almost not upset that he's playing a really good player right away.
Well, and Nadal has hinted, he hasn't said officially this is his last Roland-Garros, and doors are always open. But I agree. I like that, Gill, that he can, let's see what's going on, rather than just say have 2 other matches and then you have to play a player. Let's just see right away where the fitness is, where the tennis is, and enjoy some great tennis.
In fact, Nadal said yesterday, quote, he's not 100% sure this will be his last. So he's actually come out and said, let's not say any, but it might be. And he won't know until we're in a retrospective position, until he's looking back. Like, we just have a lot swirling around this match. The twisted ankle was the last time they met, the court case, the fact that it's Rafa, the draw itself. There are unseeded players that are playing qualifiers or lucky losers, and everything in between. Stan Wawrinka's playing Andy Murray, and this is what Nadal gets, but that's the draw.
That is the draw. Yeah. I also, it isn't great for the tournament because you do want to maximize the number of Nadal matches. I actually know someone going Thursday, and didn't I mention this on the last episode, actually? That I know someone who's going to big Nadal fans traveling to Paris. They have night session Thursday. They've been asking me what the odds are that they're going to see Nadal. And I was saying, well, he might request the day, but I did think that he had a good chance to win his first round match. Now I think he has certainly a less than 50% chance to win his first round match. But he requested the day, everybody. He is going to play during the day. At least that's been reported by the newspaper, which I commonly mispronounce L'Equipe.
Well, how is it pronounced?
I don't know. I think L'Equipe. I don't know.
And I assume, Gill, that your language in school was Spanish, given your appreciation for the tennis playing style.
That's absolutely correct. My Spanish pronunciations are completely on point. The French pronunciations are a learning curve. I can get there, but it usually takes me a couple tries. What do we expect in the actual match? So we kind of covered the Nadal-Zverev draw bonanza. Amy, great point about the rigged conspiracies, because the tournament wouldn't want this to happen. And there's the initial shock of, oh my God, that's the first round match. But what about the tennis itself? Joel, you think that Zverev is a particularly difficult matchup for Rafa?
Well, he's experienced with Rafa. He's played him many times. So to some degree, the resume is less important to Zverev than it would be to other opponents. It's like he knows, okay, it's Rafa. And he had a very good showing in Rome. He just won Rome. And he's got a good serve, and moves pretty well. I think we're going to see a lot of cross-court Zverev forehands to the Rafa backhand. I mean, that's just we're going to see some of that, and then they're going to see if Nadal can pull off. I just remember from that match in 2022, he came up with some amazing shots at some critical times. So that's the X factor. But when Zverev is playing well, he has a clinical quality, and I mean that as a compliment. I mean, very consistent, depth, power, and it's sustainable for a while. So I'm obviously looking forward. I think the X factor is going to be the Rafa serve, how well he serves, and what that does for him.
I wouldn't mind going back and looking at our preview, or our post show after that match. So Joel, you were saying that Zverev hit some amazing shots in that match. Rafa. That's what I remember.
Oh yeah, no, Rafa came up with a few forehands in the tiebreak. Yeah, it was Rafa. No, I don't associate Zverev with spectacular shots.
Yeah. I seem to remember, I don't know if it was Gill or one of us, and maybe we all agreed, making the point that Alex maybe should have won that first set, and somehow Rafa came up with these crazy, amazing shots just at the right moments, and he kind of stole it.
I think there was a forehand pass down the line off of a Zverev cross-court backhand. I don't know if it was set point, but I seem to remember, I think it was a cross-court pass, Gill. I think it was a You think it was cross-court pass?
Yeah, that could angle again, it was quintessential Nadal. Where does this come from? This is amazing. This is part of the, somewhere who is putting the 50 greatest Nadal play shots. I mean, it's just a cascade. I don't associate Zverev again with spectacular as much as just solid depth. And so I think what we're going to really see is the whole Nadal fitness.
I seem to remember Alex missing a couple of pretty easy volleys. And I remember thinking, Nadal's hit some volleys that aren't going to make any highlight reel, but if you kind of added up the errors, Nadal would have been much more solid at the net so far in this match. And then I, of course, the sprained ankle, and I kind of never went back and looked at it again.
But just think, 3 hours for 1.9 sets. That's
Well,
some
okay, so the roof was closed and it was a humid day.
Yeah.
The conditions got so slow, it was insane. They just couldn't hit through each other at all.
That's right.
And it was the thing. So the legacy of that match has frustrated me because Sasha, whenever he talks about it, which has been often, understandably, it was like a big moment in his career with not only the match, but then the injury. And he really seems to acts like he was winning the match. He was down a set. He won 0 sets in the match. So everyone always says he almost beat Nadal. He didn't win a set. You got to win 3. So I've been very frustrated with now it was a incredible contest. It was certainly hanging in the balance. My take during the match, and this I very much vividly remember when we were talking about the match on 3, I thought it was going to end in somebody cramping. That was kind of my feeling watching the match. I thought the way this match is going to end is one of them is going to collapse physically, because it was the physicality in that was above the level that is possible for 4 or 5 hours.
It would seem. I mean, this is what's kind of fun about tennis. It would seem so. I mean, again, 3 hours for that many sets. And again, also the Zverev talking about it. Look, we all know, we all play. I call it tennis player logic. It makes me think of a joke I make. I say I don't put much stock in one set unless I win it. It's kind of, so that's part of it. Maybe that's true in life and all things. It's like how we wish to see things in order to keep ourselves moving forward. We tell ourselves stories in order to live. It doesn't mean they're true or not or accurate. It's not the point. You're right. He lost the match, but every tennis player I've ever talked to needs to construct, and I don't blame him for that. He should do that. That's how a world-class athlete should think.
In terms of the tennis itself, Gill, though, Zverev has been doing something that's a bit of an anomaly with his serve. He has been putting around 80%, if not higher, first serves in, which is there's kind of a sweet spot that's you don't actually typically want to put too high of a percentage of first serve in, because if you do, that kind of can be an indicator that you're not putting enough on your first serve. But the thing is, he's putting a lot. So he's got the double-headed monster going where he's putting a lot in, high percentage, and he's winning a very high percentage of his first serve points. And he's been doing this, he's really been doing it since he came back. It's been kind of building into a crescendo, but he's been doing it on clay recently, where typically the serve is supposed to kind of be, the edge is kind of taken off of it because of the surface. But that's how he's winning for sure. And back earlier in his career, he had a problem with double faults, and maybe he wasn't making as high a percentage of first serves. He's corrected that. Well, now we have Nadal, who is really statistically one of the best returners ever. And we know he likes to stand way, way back. So this will be the chess match or the battle within the battle to see how they play this. And I think you raise a great point about how humid it was that day and conditions. I think conditions will play a part.
Yeah, I think Sasha with the serve, I think that's really smart on clay versus particularly like someone like Nadal. I think Nadal wins a lot of return points. That doesn't necessarily mean, and this is one of our journalists says, it doesn't mean he's a great returner. He's an effective returner, but he's not a returner like Novak. It means he gets a lot of balls in play. And so the thinking is, Zverev borrowing a page, let's say, from the Agassi book, you're not going to ace him. Don't try to ace him. You've had problems with your second serve. Take the second serve out of the mix. Get in serves, get in a lot of first serves, and let your legs do the work to his legs. You're 11 years younger. Use your fitness and go to work rather than.
I still think he's a great returner by virtue of the fact that he puts balls in play.
Right,
because if you think about it, the most common play in tennis is the ball is served and it doesn't come back. That is either an ace or a return error, right?
Mm-hmm.
The most common thing that happens ever. So if Nadal is putting balls back in play at a high rate, that makes him a good returner, in my book.
I get that, but what I think a guy like Sasha is, Nadal's return is not going to hurt. It's not going to put.
It's not rushing. It's not rushing.
It's not going to put him back on his heels and say, whoa, this depth and this pace. He's going to make it. I mean, there are all these things, I think, in a tennis match. There are a lot of concessions we need to make to understand. It's just if someone's weak on a side, it doesn't mean they completely miss. It means this one hurts me less than that one. So, yes, get in first serves. I mean, I could see the Zverev strategy with it, particularly on clay.
No, it's very smart. And Joel, you're exactly right as far as saying not going for the ace. Because, yes, he's serving huge miles per hour. And that's the big anomaly. It's how are you serving above 70% consistently, leading the tour in first serve percentage, and bombing 127 on average? Like, that has never added up. And the reason is mostly that he's just an amazing server, full stop. But the other reason is that he's not going for the sidelines. Like, he's not serving like Djokovic or Federer or Hurkacz in terms of I'm trying to pick the corner and be really, really precise. Tennis Insights data that averages out distance from the sideline has Zverev as a slightly below tour average location server. So that is where that's the trade-off there. He hits less aces. You think about the final against Jari, he hit 6 aces in 2 sets. It's pretty modest, right? Yeah. But there were tons of service winners because Nico couldn't really handle the pace. But I think Rafa is so good actually at, I mean, we've already talked about it. He's going to stand on the back fence. And if you don't hit your spot, the serve's probably coming back. It's just, the question for me would be, because his movement and his defense has diminished so much, is that return strategy as effective? Because you are coming from a defensive position on the court that you then have to recover, and that takes more movement. So I'll be looking for that. And then the other thing, guys, Zverev on the backhand, 6'6", massive pace on that two-hander, incredible consistency. The whole like lefty to righty cross court pattern, Nadal's forehand is Zverev's backhand. It's just one of those matchups where Rafa just doesn't have that advantage that he always has. And again, you kind of compare it to Novak. I don't think Zverev takes as much time away as Novak, but I do think he hits the two-hander even bigger than Novak, and he's not as affected by the height on Rafa's forehand. So I agree that Zverev's a tough matchup. The overall head-to-head is Nadal leads 7-3. Zverev did beat Rafa 3 times in a row, 3 years in a row, 2019, 2020, 2021. So you have had success for Zverev, but ultimately, I don't think that says anything about the matchup. It's just that Rafa has mostly been a better player than Sasha in general. It's going to be interesting. Any final thoughts on this before we go to Novak?
I think you make a really good point about Rafa hitting to Zverev's backhand, and where you can get errors out of Zverev is definitely his forehand. In the past, Nadal has been one of the best in the world at running around and hitting forehand cross court. So his movement, he recently said, or somebody said about him, somebody who practiced with him. Who practiced with him? Wasn't Runa.
Was it Medvedev?
Yeah, it might have been Medvedev. Said that Rafa is moving better than what he had seen
in Rome.
Yes.
Yes.
And So if he's moving well and he's able to run around and hit forehand cross court inside out, that might be the play. So look for that.
Well, he needs to be doing that a lot, hitting his inside out, hitting his off forehands, his cross court. I mean, really, and the first set way more meaningful to Nadal than to Zverev in this match because of the age factor.
For sure. Nadal has been practicing really well. People keep reporting his scores. He beat Holger Rune this morning. It's one of my least favorite things on tennis Twitter is the people watching
scores of practice sets.
Yeah, people watching the practices before a slam and then tweeting out the scores. I don't think it means zip.
Is it going to affect their UTR rating? I mean, God. I mean, that stuff. Wow. I mean, see, I like it when Amy looked at the infamous Federer's Zapruder film and Amy had an insight into how Roger might have been hitting the ball. But now we're using scores of practice sets. Wow. What's next? Are we going to see a guy called M instead of W before they played the practice sets? I think that's going to have a meaning for what he's going to do in the match.
Yeah. However, it also has been said by Rafa that he was practicing well in Rome, and he was upset with how that didn't convert onto the match court. So I do think that, and you see that with a lot of players all the time. I mean, that's really the key.
Every player.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, and then there are some players who practice pretty poorly often, and then they're able to turn it on during matches. So you have different things. Rafa spoke very optimistically. I think that was the biggest headline from his press conference, though, is that he said the biggest thing that stood out to me, he said, for the first time, I'm moving without limitations. Nothing would surprise me in this Nadal-Zverev match other than Rafa wins in straights. You could tell me anything else that happens, and I just wouldn't be that shocked. I think this is a match that Nadal is going to come out with tons of energy, probably move better than we've ever seen this year, probably serve bigger than we've ever seen this year. I think it's a nervy kind of situation for Zverev. He understands not only that he's playing Nadal here, but also that he has a chance to win the tournament, probably has more expectations on him coming into this event than any slam in the last 3-4 years. So I think that plays a factor either. Nothing would shock me.
I don't know. I think he could say the court case was bothering him or something. I don't think he has a ton of expectations for the very reason that we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, that it's wide open. It's a wide open French Open.
I think that's why he thinks he has a chance, though. I think he sees it's a different vibe coming in here because you have the Alcaraz injury, Sinner injury. We'll talk about this later. Novak form, Rafa no longer dominant. So I think that vibe puts more pressure on Zverev and Tsitsipas and Ruud. I think they all probably feel that a little bit.
Well,
He is one of the players that is seen as one of the best players never to have won a slam.
Which statistically I think is pretty inarguable.
Yeah, it's true. It's pretty. Yeah. He's been to a final. He's been to a bunch of semis. Absolutely. It's been around a while.
He's won 4 clay court masters. 4 doesn't sound like a huge number, but if you compare it to everybody else, it's a really big number. It's more than Tsitsipas. We always talk about how great Tsitsipas is on clay. All right, so Djokovic, let's start with Geneva because he loses to Tomas Machac in an extremely topsy-turvy 3-setter. He was up 4-1, lost the first set, won the second set 6-love, and I'm going off memory. He lost the third set, something like 6-2. I think it was something in that range. So very uneven match. And again, it's kind of a tournament ends for Djokovic in not just a loss, but a strange loss.
Yeah, it was strange. He looked kind of out of it. God, I'm still wondering about the bottle. I mean, all these, yeah, it was strange. That was a strange performance. It would have been one thing if he just lost consistently 3-3 to someone who played better, but the roller coaster aspect of that match was is disturbing. And now I just think, wow, the whole 24 years since the Aussie semis has been really tough for Novak.
My confidence, because of all of these inconsistent performances, it's not all that high right now. Coming into Roland-Garros, I'm not in a place where I just feel okay. It's the French. It's a major. He'll just flip a switch, turn it on, and the reason being. And by the way, it's not as if I don't think that's a possibility. I think it totally is. I'm just saying my confidence in it happening is not as high as it normally would be, and it's not all that high, period. It's not the losses. It's what they've looked like. You go back to last year, he plays Holger Rune in the quarterfinal in Rome. That was an amazing match. And I think all three of us ended up hitting the nail on the head, because after that loss, we were like, no, good level, top 10 level, looks like a guy who's ready to play the French Open. And he goes on and he wins it. I haven't felt that way at any point about these losses, because there have been just physical and mental ups and downs in these matches.
I agree with you. Yeah, I agree. I see. It's like, it looks very, because it's funny. You see 1, 2. It's like, wait a second, what's the pattern here? So it's like, are we supposed to be surprised if he has an early loss at Roland-Garros? It shouldn't be, because there hasn't been much confidence-raising form, right? And the flip switching, but it's a strange. It's one of the strangest patches of Novak's career ever, and that includes the 2018 period where he lost early at Roland-Garros.
He's not right. Whether it's physical, mental, some sort of combination of the two, he's just not right. But one thing that I feel very certain of, it's that he's not done. Like, could he win another Grand Slam? You bet he could, and more maybe. So I've seen him go through lulls in his career, and it's almost like, I don't want to say he relishes a downturn or a lull, but the rebirth seems to feel so good to him that it's almost like he needs to hit a low so that he can then climb back to the highs. So I would be surprised if he had a really, really good tournament here, like a run to the semifinals. But I wouldn't be shocked because of who he is.
Well, the closest we probably have ever seen to this, to this kind of stretch, as Joel alluded to, was that end of 2017, beginning of 2018. And then there was the second wind that ultimately came at Wimbledon. And there were signs that it was getting a little better. Cecchinato lost at Roland-Garros, and then it was Wimbledon where Djokovic turned it on to another level, played that epic semifinal with Nadal, and then it kind of, it was back to normal. But yeah, there was that moment. I think not right is a perfect way to put it, Amy. It's just like he's not feeling good on the court. It's so clear that it's not a situation where, oh, he's just a step slower. He's competing really hard, but he just doesn't have it in him physically. It's so far off that you feel like there's some sort of extenuating circumstance all the time. And he even said after the match in Geneva, he's like, I was not feeling well at all. I was feeling horrible. The way he's losing continues to be a little bit abnormal. And yeah, I think at some point he's going to stabilize in a way. There's no doubt about it. It's not going to look like this for the rest of time.
Well, we know he's pointing to the Olympics, but that doesn't mean he doesn't want to do well in Paris and London. But it is just it's strange. And I agree, he's not done. It's not that way thing, but this thing, we don't know.
Yeah, and it's stabilizing can mean a lot of things. It can mean that he does win more slams. It could mean he doesn't win more slams, but it's not going to be, I guess what I'm mainly saying is it's not going to look like the Tabilo and the Mahac match where it's like, what the heck's happening here? This is just weird on every level, mentally and physically. That's not going to last forever, is I think the main point. Let's look at his draw, guys. I think it's a really, really good draw for Djokovic, actually. It's French wild card Pierre-Hugues Herbert in the first round, who has really struggled to make much headway at tour level for the last few years. And then second round, probably based on the comfort level on clay, it's probably going to be Roberto Carballes Baena, who plays Constant Lestienne, the very like unorthodox Frenchman. And, you know, Pierre-Hugues Herbert needs a wild card for a reason. And Carballes Baena is a rock solid player, unbelievable fitness, who barely ever misses, but he has little serve and the backhand is really soft. You know, that he's just a player that doesn't have a lot of muscle in his game. I think it's a really, I think it's a as good a start as you could ask for Novak.
Well, that'll be a good measure, particularly the one in the second round, because then we'll get an idea that if Novak can be in kind of business-like mode to beat that, to win that match.
And you've got like a lot of French players around him, so I'm just curious about the crowd. I'm sure they'll be respectful of him. It's not like, you know, an Italian playing in Rome. But yeah, if he can kind of work his way into things and he's feeling good. I mean, it might have been like a virus or something that he had in Geneva, then I don't see much of a problem.
Herbert, I don't know if he's still serving volleying a lot. Obviously, he's a great doubles player. He is an excellent volleyer. He's got like a John McEnroe looking serve. He's on a really bad stretch right now. He has I'm counting them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 losses to players outside the top 100. 4 of them are to players outside the top 200 just since the start of April. You know, he made a final in Naples in a challenger in March, and that was good. And since then, it's been a very rough stretch. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see the crowd. It's an interesting style because it's someone who comes forward. Very different style, probably in the second round with RCB. And then you kind of zoom out, bigger picture. Casper Ruud is the seed on the other side, the number 5 seed. And then Taylor Fritz is there. Tommy Paul is there. Francisco Cerundolo is there, and Musetti is a potential third round. So after the first 2 rounds, I think that's where the real action begins, as it's known to do. But I think this is a strong quarter. I think there are a lot of really good players in this quarter. I just think the first 2 rounds are easy. After that, I don't see any relief.
No, those are good play. Musetti or possibly Bonfi, which could be a tremendously entertaining match. But I think also the guy's gonna shot maker guys, and Novak historically is fine playing those players. Well, he's fine playing every kind of player, but those shot maker ones who are going to come off with some neat shots, but they win 1 point for them and get the crowd going. And I just want to see Novak have some nice business-like tennis. That's what's been missing during this pattern. It's not, like we said, it's not just the losses, it's the texture of the losses. That's totally. a real head scratcher.
Saiboch could beat Monfils in that match. So, and he's an interesting player. He knocked off Medvedev at the French Open in the first round, famously. Casper Ruud at the bottom. Casper had to play 2 matches today. So he's another question mark. Add him to the list of question marks, you know, Alcaraz, Sinner, Ruud, because he's been really up and down, but he just won a tournament. So, but it's the tournament. Who wants to play 2 matches going into Roland-Garros? So, but obviously
Casper does.
Well, he knows what he's doing on clay, but he's had a back injury, you know, so a question mark, I'll put it. But,
I'm confident in Ruud because he keeps doing this with the Geneva thing. I think it's absolutely wild that he likes to do this because nobody likes to do this. They like to get to the slam early, practice in the conditions, rest the body. Ruud plays Geneva every year, and it's worked for him. But if you look at his season, I mean, he's been in 5 finals this year.
Well, he's just, you know, he's going to look back on his career. I mean, I so admire his dedication and, you know, and his Geneva Convention and the way he just goes about his tennis. I mean, he's been to the French finals the last 2 years, and he, I mean, what a great it's kind of a kind of role model of him. It's kind of, I feel the same way about Rublev's career, except Rube does it without the self anger, the self direct. He just goes about it, and then he'll see that the seas can part for him sometime too.
Yeah, and usually he's very good at taking advantage when they do. As far as my preview is concerned, I agonized over Ruud or Djokovic. Who do I want to put through? Ultimately, I went with Casper. I just have more trust that he's going to bring a top 10 level where Novak, there's just been too many ups and downs. Again, my confidence has just been dwindled down with him. Obviously, if he plays like Novak Djokovic, he's going to get out of the quarter. There's no debates about that in all likelihood. But
you guys know that I don't like the pick thing, right? So
yeah.
I kind of am free to do whatever I want. So I picked Djokovic and Nadal to come through. Sentimentally, it's like, how many more times am I going to be able to do this? So I just did it. And
I love it.
Everybody's mad, but I just did it.
That's really funny. Okay. Can we talk about the openness in general of this event? Joel, somebody asked me a fascinating question in a mailbag, and it was looking at the craziness of Roland-Garros pre-2005, where you had a lot of players making the final, even winning the tournament, who not another time in their career did they make the second week of a slam. Like, just very kind of outlier results, and Roland-Garros was that I don't know, like anybody could win kind of thing for a few years there, right? And then it really changed. But I want to just ask you, like, why was it so chaotic?
Well, I think what was happening, I call the era before roughly 01, 02, I call it the spheres of influence era. There's the era of specialists. They're much more, the surfaces were different, the styles were more different. So you had your grass court guys like your Pete Sampras and Ivan Izovich and Richard Krajicek, your server guys who did well on the grass, because this was before the grass changed at Wimbledon. So the grass is very much the grass. And the clay was just entering kind of the Lexilon era. So the clay was still kind of what I call the attrition era. So we'll note that through the mid-90s into the 2000s, Al Costa and Ferrero and Sergi Bruguera, so they were winning. So each tournament was its own kind of deal. And I think no one, particularly on clay, was exceptionally dominant. There hadn't emerged a Nadal who was like, wow, this is the ultimate upgrade of the Spanish approach to winning on clay. He was the ultimate example of it. The others were pretty good. I mean, I think you could call Al Costa and Ferrero Sergi Bruguera 2.0, but they weren't dominant. They just weren't, they didn't have enough of that arsenal. So it was kind of, I mean, it was just wide open. I don't know if it's crazy. Maybe it was sane. Maybe that's supposed to be normal, is to have a lot of contenders in those years. So it just was kind of going like that. But I think once they started seeding 32 players at the majors, once the surfaces became more homogenous around 02, 03, everything became a lot more, we entered this period of the Grand Three Empire, of these guys cumulatively winning more than 60 slams. And it became easier because the surfaces were much more homogenous.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating how quickly things changed, because it flipped on a dime. The reason we like to go back and reminisce on that period is because it's drawing some comparisons to where we're at right now with the uncertainty at the top, the idea that somebody outside of the norm can win the tournament. We were talking off air in the beginning, and anybody who's kind of listened to my preview knows where I stand on this. I think there are 7 players who, if they win Roland-Garros, they would be fairly unsurprising champions, which is a big number.
Can you give them to us, Gill?
Well, how about you guys start naming players? I'll tell you if they're in the 7.
Novak.
Yes, that's one.
Maybe. Why we will alternate?
Rafa.
I'd be shocked if he won the whole tournament. So
oh,
he's not
on.
my 7. He's not my 7.
Oh,
Okay,
did you learn nothing from that Australian Open.
He hasn't made a semifinal at any event in 2 years. So it would
Think
be,
of the
to me, it would be shocking.
institutional knowledge. There's a statue of him. You can't say you'd be shocked if Rafael Nadal won the French Open. That doesn't fall into the shock category.
I agree. It seems almost like a separate category. I just don't know
Yeah,
that his
give him
body
his
can
own
do
category.
this. Yeah,
Give him
and
his own
I'm
category.
very happy to give him his own category of this man has reached a
He did
god
it
level
again.
status where it doesn't matter what he does, you just always think he can do it. But again, I just think physically there's probably a limitation there where okay, 7 best of 5 set matches here based on, you know, that's where it seems like, okay, it's a crazy mountain to climb. But I also think he has a chance in the Zverev match. I think he can beat Zverev. So that gives you an idea of also how highly I think of him. But he's not in my 7. So are we at 1 right now?
We have Novak and okay, and go ahead, Amy.
Sinner,
2,
Okay, Rude.
3,
Zverev,
4,
Let's see here. Carlos Alcaraz.
5,
Tsitsipas,
6.
And who's your 7th possibility? Let's see here. Who would that be? Medvedev?
He's won a big title recently.
Taylor Fritz?
Nope.
Medvedev?
No. Medvedev
I mean,
is actually
think shock is your jaw is hanging open. That can't be Medvedev. I mean, viewers, listeners,
Yeah.
can I just say that, like, when Gill asked this question off air, I said it kind of falls into 2 categories for me, like shock, I cannot believe this, and mild surprise. And then those that, you know, yeah, okay, Sinner won, you know, almost an expected contender.
Rublev?
Rublev is my 7th. And then I have Medvedev power ranked at 8, right after Rublev. But I would be kind of shocked if Medvedev wins the French Open. I don't know.
Your jaw would be on the floor?
Among all of the players I would be shocked by, Medvedev I would be least shocked by, which is why I have him right after Rublev. But anybody after Rublev, I would be shocked. I mean, and I know he won Rome, and everyone was shocked when he won Rome. And I actually picked him to the final last year of Roland-Garros, but I don't think he's looking all that great. But, you know, at the end of the day, Amy, I think you have me to 8 because you're just making me actually contemplate the alternate universe that Medvedev wins. And you're right. I don't think it's jaw on the floor. Okay, so you convinced me on Medvedev.
But not Nadal.
But Nadal's separate category. We agree. I'm putting him separate category. The rest of these players you're not going to convince me on. I'd be shocked. So, and these are who I have right after that top 8 when I did my rankings. It's Fritz, Jari, Rune, Hurkacz, Khachanov. And then even, you know, after that, guys like Dimitrov, Struff. So all of these guys, like, I'm sorry, I think too highly of Tsitsipas and Zverev and Rude. I think the possibility is too strong that Sinner finds his best tennis, Alcaraz finds his best tennis, Djokovic finds his best tennis. And in that respect, like, I don't think Jari can win Roland-Garros. I'm sorry.
I had him in my final 4 just because of the way I love him as a player. Love the guy. But just because of the way the draw was, I ended up going with him. But yeah, that would be pretty surprising if he won.
You know, for all these guys, like, that's where I'm just saying, like, I don't think it's 12, 13 guys can win. I just think the top player, I think they're too good. I trust one of them to win it. I think, you know, they are good. That's my perspective.
There's just so many question marks, you know, because of Alcaraz's forehand, Sinner's hip. I mean, this is crazy. Go ahead, Joel.
Oh, yeah, but I think it's kind of fun. It's kind of interesting. I think the Sinner Alcaraz injuries have really kind of mucked up what we thought was going to be a 2024 plotline based on Sinner's excellence in Australia, based on Alcaraz, by the way, being a reigning Wimbledon champion and a very compelling player, beating Sinner at Indian Wells and etc. But instead, we're kind of, they're injured. Rafa, Novak, well, and so it's kind of intriguing. And so therefore, when it's over, someone will be coronated, possibly. Someone who there's a strong chance that someone who's never won a major will win a major. And that will be interesting, and will be and more than ever will be in the kind of the post big three thinking. I mean, right, of what
or Novak or Rafa will win, and we'll be shaking our heads in that category.
Yet again. Hey, that's fine. That's right. That's good. But I think it's kind of, I don't know. I guess I don't ascribe a crazy or saying to it. It's just the tennis as it is. It's just like with draws. It's all right. It happens. It just occurs. I don't know. I'm just kind of like, it's gonna be, and we'll see, and we're gonna see. I mean, I'm interested to see how the tennis is actually played. Like these rising young players, what they've learned from Novak, Rafa, and the Swiss guy who retired a while ago, about how to go about managing themselves through a major for 2 weeks.
Well, I know this might not be exactly what you meant, but I think what we have seen over the years is when these guys get chances, like when their draws open up and they haven't won a slam and here it is right in front of them, nerve management becomes like the biggest thing in the world. And we saw that in 2020 with Thiem and Zverev, where it's like, oh my God, we're here. This is us two in the final. And it just became all about nerves.
Well, particularly when they're that much more precious because for so long they were gobbled up by 3 guys. So it's like, oh my God, I got a chance. So I think we're going to be we're entering an era now where we're not so certain that somebody's going to be winning these at the clip. I mean, that Roger, and Roger was winning his, and then Rafa dominated the French, and where's my way in here? And then along comes Novak, and he just started devouring slams too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love it. I think there's a really fun buzz in the lead up to Roland-Garros. I don't think we had as many great matches in the clay court season as we normally do, but I'm confident that this next fortnight is going to make up for it. And I'm really looking forward to it. We are going to try our best to stay very active during the first week. Definitely the second week, if Nadal or Djokovic is in it, we will be all over it, on top of it. And can't wait to get back together after some of these matches are played. That'll do it for this episode of 3. Remember, we're available on all podcast platforms. Leave a rating and a review on Apple, and if you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe. We will see you next time on the next episode of 3.